What's up, everybody? So this is a topic that I have actually been meaning to cover for a while now, and largely because it seems pretty clear that a lot of people don't understand what the difference is between emulation and piracy. And it's very obvious to me that people do not understand the difference because I can see it in the comments in almost all of my videos in relation to these topics. Have you ever wondered why so many people are able to post a whole bunch of emulation tutorials and they can get away with it without getting shut down? Have you never wondered why so many massive channels are able to just post a casual video of playing an upscaled version of Breath of the Wild on there without Nintendo suing them? And obviously it's because emulation is completely legal and permissible. There is no gray area about it. And I don't know if this is usually a confusion that's limited to Nintendo folks or if it's something that all console people struggle with, but it feels like one of those discussions where people are so scared of even moving close towards the areas in which piracy exists that they've somehow convinced themselves that something that is entirely legal, entirely acceptable, entirely not against any rules, in their minds is considered the most blasphemous of acts. So I've kind of touched up a little bit on the topics in relation to why you would buy a console and homebrew it, why you would buy something and mod it, and all of the benefits in relation to it that have nothing to do with piracy. And it's funny because even in those videos, despite the fact that I clearly explained the benefits of modding that don't involve any form of piracy, people were like, oh yeah, this is full of crap and you guys are all just pirates and that's the only reason you would do this. But some people can't be convinced. I don't know what to tell you. In any case, in this video, I want to talk a little bit more about just emulation on a third-party device, a PC. Historically, the way things have worked is that when you buy a game, you own that game, or the license to that game, whatever you want to put it. I'm sure you've heard people say that they dump ROMs or that they rip out their own ROMs or whatever way you want to phrase it. Basically, you buy a physical game and then whatever the contexts in that physical game are, you rip them out and you can play them on whatever device you want to, because you're actually not obligated to play it on the console that it came from. So what that means is that if there is an emulator for that console, instead of having to buy the game and put it into your console to play it, you can actually just play it on your PC through the emulator. And it's completely acceptable, or at least historically it's been completely acceptable. That's why there are a lot of people that have purchased a handful of Switch games and played them on their PCs. Their PCs are stronger, they run better, they can upscale the games to their liking, and they do this by buying the physical copy, dumping out the internal data that's in the cartridge, and downloading it directly onto their PC. And that's also why there are a lot of people that are waiting for a Nintendo Switch 2 emulator, because they know that they'll be able to play the Switch 2 games without buying a Switch 2. And again, historically, that act has been acceptable. The only reason I say historically now is because it's a little bit more of a gray area, it seems. And the only reason it's a gray area is because a lot of these companies are just changing the words about what you can and can't do depending on how you purchase and download these titles. But realistically speaking, if you're buying the title, ripping out the ROM and playing it on an emulator and not selling it, not posting stuff online, you're pretty much in the clear at that point. And nobody's really going to come after you. Now, if you pirate, realistically speaking, nobody's going to come after you either. But the difference is, piracy is a lot more clearly illegal. In most of the world, anyway. Now, legal doesn't necessarily mean it's moral or immoral, and I don't really care if people are pirating or not, that's not my business. And I think it's hilarious how many people assume that piracy is automatically theft, even though it's not, it's copyright infringement, but whatever. People are gonna say what they like, even if they're wrong. But what a lot of people don't understand, and specifically a lot of Nintendo fans that I've noticed commenting on my channel, on my videos, and just the arguments I see in the comment sections, while yes, there are people that generally like to proudly comment that they're going to pirate, they're not to be confused with the ones that just say they're going to emulate the Switch 2 games once there's an emulator, if there's an emulator. Because normally what I see happens is somebody says, I cannot wait until there's an emulator on PC so that I can play the Switch 2 games on the PC, which prompts another person to go and insult them and call them a thief and say you want to steal everything, and there's just so much wrong with that statement. Number one, they didn't imply that they weren't going to buy the game. If they buy the game, that's not an issue. Number two, even if they were to pirate it, they didn't steal anything because it's infringement. Number three, I think that person is actually unaware that this is okay. And that's a big reason why I'm making this video. Because think about it, and this obviously is not for everybody. The reason video game consoles exist specifically is because they are computers that are stripped down of every bit of computing on there, and they focus solely on gaming. They are optimized for video games and nothing else. Video game consoles became popular because it allowed you to buy a machine that only focused on one thing, which means the prices were cheaper and you didn't have to let your kids use your personal computer that you used for work or web surfing and whatnot. But back then, the idea was that gamers were kids and parents are the ones who own the computer. Now we're all a bunch of old people that are still gaming and own PCs. We own laptops. We own all kinds of devices. Well, if your computing device is strong enough to run the games that you want to buy, why would you go out there and buy a whole separate device? If I can buy every single game that I want to buy and just play it on a single device, I should be allowed to do that. Everybody already kind of says this already. That's why there's a lot of people who are saying Nintendo should just go third party and start porting their games over to the PC. And while I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that thought, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. I understand why gaming consoles still exist, and I understand why they're not going to port their games over if they don't have to. But with all of these giant rigs that everyone's building, and the advancement of technology and people out there who are known to break devices down and build these emulators, it actually shouldn't matter too much for the end user at the end of the day, as long as they have confidence in emulators eventually surfacing. Because I know, for example, that right now I can take every single one of my Switch 1 games, and I have for the most part, rip them off of their cartridges, mess with the settings a little bit, and have an experience that is superior to the Switch, probably even the Switch 2. And at no point in time through all of this was there any piracy. Now, there might be a breach in the terms of services. I have no idea because the terms of services for specific game carts, I don't know what they are and I don't care to read it. But I'm like 99% sure what I'm doing is not illegal. Or like I was saying earlier, historically it was not illegal. But even then, if it's against the Nintendo terms of services, I'm not playing these games online, I'm not accessing Nintendo's store, this is on my computer, which makes it a lot more of a better experience than actually just playing straight up on the Switch. Because Nintendo, through their terms of services, for example, if they see people that are not pirating, but they're using the MIG switch to play their own personally legal backups, then Nintendo can be like, I don't like what you're doing, I am banning you from using online. That's a private consequence, not a legal one. But it's not like they can ban me from using my computer because I decided to play a ROM on there. So basically, if you are somebody that's good with PCs, or if you're somebody that only buys consoles but you know there are people that are good with PCs, and they tell you that they play all of their games on their PC via emulation, you gotta understand that they're not necessarily saying they're pirating. Now again, there are a lot of people that will pirate, and there are a lot of people that will proudly pirate. But likewise, there are a lot of people that just like the convenience of number one, not having to buy a full-on game console, and number two, having all of their games on one machine, which they know how to optimize and they know how to get the best experience out of it. And this isn't a Switch 2 discussion yet, at least, because there is still no emulator for the Switch 2. But if you're somebody out there that's thinking about getting a gaming PC at some point, you should realize that it is actually legal for you to still buy games and play them on the PC, even if they're not officially made for the PC. This is why so many Steam Deck users say that they bought a Steam Deck and stopped using their Switch, but they play their Switch games on the Steam Deck. It's an alternative way to play the games that you own. And with so many different handheld PCs coming out, so many different gaming PCs out there available, and the fact that it seems like consoles are gonna try to go up in price and compete with these devices, I highly urge everybody to carefully consider the way that they can game instead of just sticking with a home console. And I say this not only as a console gamer, but as a Nintendo fan, somebody that grew up on Nintendo, somebody that just bought their first PC a few months ago, and I'm still like really just breaking into it. So I don't even have like all of the answers yet, nor do I even have all the best recommendations. But I'm realizing with this one device, I'm effectively replacing about 7 that used to be under my TV, plus all of these additional libraries of games that I can purchase that are native to the PC. And all of this has been done without anything piracy related, anything illegal, and the experiences I'm getting via emulation are drastically better than any official form of emulation that I've seen through Nintendo. And I realize for a lot of you here, I am preaching to the choir. For a lot of you here, you're all pirating anyway, and it doesn't matter what I say. And likewise, for realistically even more of you, you're just gonna see this video and start slamming on the keyboard about piracy or thieves or whatever it is that you're going to be wrong about. But for the select few of you out there that are just kind of not really sure about this, look it up. I imagine there are a lot of people that were like me, that would just go and buy the console and buy the games and play them on there, and you never thought to just buy the game officially and rip your game out of there and play it on a PC. It's not as hard as you think, and even though the upfront cost might be more expensive, it actually might be more worth it to you in the long run, and might be significantly more efficient than just buying a console and having something else plugged into your TV. Either way, I think that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you on the next one.